Welcome to Cyber Synapse, the podcast that's creating connections through candid conversations about cyber issues. Sponsored by Agency, with your host, Kath Nibbs. Welcome to this week's episode. It's been a bit of an awkward day in terms of trying to record this. There are builders outside my work, so I can't seem to get 2 minutes to actually get a moment to start recording without the interference of the noise. I've then come home to try and do it there, and basically everybody in my house is noisy, the dogs are noisy, the children are noisy, etc, etc. So I've just jumped out to the shed at the end of the garden. So this week I'm really lucky to, and I say lucky because I get to talk to people who are my friends, and I get to talk to people who share the same kind of passions as me. Now this week I'm talking to one of my friends, Paula, and it's more of a biohacking approach that we talk about. However, it is cyber based because what we go on to talk about are kind of the audio books and podcasts. And yeah, I'm going to say we name drop a lot in this podcast because both Paula and I, we know who influences us in most of our life and when we're talking to each other. So we kind of thought what we'd do was when we were talking is we'd actually give you the names of the people that we're influenced by, or some of the people anyway. I will be putting the notes, putting those names and resources in the show notes. There's a load for you to look through. Hopefully it's going to be really helpful. This was a brilliant episode in terms of the tangents that we went on, but also we stuck to our script as well. What else? Yeah, and I'm kind of taking a little bit of a slow down break at the moment because instead of writing my second book, I'm now writing 4. So I don't know how that quite happened, but there you go. I'm also doing my PhD, and obviously I keep talking every week about the money and the fact that I'm self-funding to look into cyber trauma, something that I've coined for over 7 years. And realistically, I'm looking for parents to pass this on to organisations and schools and so on, because the impact of graphic images on children is much bigger than people actually realise, and I've been dealing with it for 7 years, hence the name cyber trauma. So this is my way of actually bringing something via the research paradigm and bringing it to people where it's more evidence-based, and it'll probably have a bit more clout. Because, you know, what do I know? I'm only a psychotherapist. Yeah, Patreon, head on over to www.patreon.com/cybersynapse. Sign up and become one of my Patreons, which will support me and this podcast. Also, if you'd like to advertise on this podcast, get in touch. I'm now opening it up for season 2 that I'm going to have the adverts in because that's the only sustainable way to do it. And thirdly, out of everybody that we name dropped in the podcast today, we'd love to come over and help you out in terms of being your admin secretary. No, we wouldn't, because I want to be my own person. I've had a lot of fun doing this episode. Enjoy it. I'll be back on with maybe some more academics shortly. In the meantime, have a wonderful week and see you soon. Welcome to Cyber Synapse. This week, I'm joined by my friend, Paula Eggers, who is a yoga teacher and a fellow biohacker, where we met on a GenSmart course, which was about nutrigenomics. But we're not here to talk about nutrigenomics today. We're going to talk about biohacking, technology, and obviously I know your story, Paula, so this is about, would you like to start with how biohacking helped you with a major health issue?
Okay, well, so when I started biohacking, biohacking didn't exist. It wasn't a term. So I think maybe in the last, 5 or 6 years, Dave Asprey has coined the term biohacking, and it's very associated with Dave Asprey and Bulletproof. But I'm talking about sort of 2007, 2008, you know, over 10 years ago. So I didn't actually know I was biohacking at the time. But what happened to me was I started to become really quite unwell. And over the space of 12 months, my health deteriorated quite quickly with digestive issues. I was very, very stressed. I was suffering a lot of anxiety. I was having a lot of weird symptoms that are very like the symptoms you get with MS and ALS. Eventually I lost lots and lots of weight. I was down to about 6 stone, about 80 pounds, which is very underweight for my height. And I eventually collapsed at work. And I went home, saw a GP, they signed me off, and that was my last day of work, pretty much. From then on in, mystery illness. It was diagnosed as ME, which is a diagnosis of exclusion. And I was basically told by medical doctors, there's nothing we can do. It's an incurable illness. We don't know what causes it. We don't know how to cure it. There's no drugs. There's no treatment. Go home to bed. You are now permanently disabled. You will never get better.
Yeah.
And my response to that was, no. No, I'm sorry. I'm not going to accept this. I was 36. Yeah. I had a lot of work to do. So I came to biohacking through having been put on the scrap heap, deciding to go out there, not physically, but mentally, from my bed and try and find out a way of getting myself well. How do I climb out of this hole? That was my driver, because I don't want to live in this hole.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking then, Paula, would you like to describe to those listeners and viewers that are not up on this, what biohacking is, and then how your journey took you from, I think your phrase "on the scrap heap" sums up the biomedical model very succinctly, and I know you know my opinions on this one. But do you want to start with how you describe biohacking, and then how that helped you?
Yeah, well, I think we all have our own kind of take on biohacking. For me, it's the modification of both the internal and the external environment to maximize and optimize health, well-being, longevity, resilience. So all the things that I didn't have when I was very, very ill, I'd lost all of that. I had zero resilience. At one point I could barely open my eyes. So it was a really long, slow fact-finding mission on how to get all of that back. So that's what biohacking is to me. And actually, because I was bedbound, because I was housebound, technology was vital in me getting to that information, finding out. I had, in the very beginning, so over the period of 2007, my health declined. By the end of 2007, I was no longer working and I was bedbound and housebound. And then by the beginning of 2008, a friend of mine said to me, there's this lady, Dr. Sarah Myhill. She's a GP in Wales. She can cure people like you. But she was a GP in the deepest depths of Wales, and I was in Lincolnshire on the east coast. I was a very long way away. I couldn't travel. I couldn't leave my house. So she was offering private treatment because the NHS doesn't allow her to treat. She doesn't treat on the NHS at all now, because the NHS doesn't allow her to treat with the modalities she treats with, because they're not drugs. We'll leave that for another time.
Park that one.
And in actual fact, colleagues in the NHS have tried to have her struck off from the BMA through the BMA 3 times. So because apparently what she's doing is dangerous, even though it's curing people from ailments like ME and MS, so-called incurable illnesses. So obviously I didn't, because of my work situation and my personal situation, I had no funds. I didn't have the funds for private treatment, and I couldn't travel. So I kind of had the internet. And luckily for me, Dr. Sarah Myhill is extremely altruistic. And she puts all, because she understands the plight of the chronically sick and what happens to you socially and economically when you are chronically sick, she gives away all of the information about her treatment for free on her website. So I was actually able to access her whole treatment program just through her website, through being able to log on and just read. And that was vital for me. That got me started. At that point, I wasn't doing biomedical testing. I couldn't really afford it. So understanding, again, our plight, Dr. Sarah put on her website, if you can't afford the expensive tests, a lot of them are over £300 a shot. She said, I tell you what, just put together this supplement package and just try it for 9 months. And you'll soon know within 9 months whether it's working for you or not. If you start to see positive changes, it's working. If you don't, it's not, and you need to go back to the drawing board. And this is what I did. I basically put together her supplement package. She has a web shop. She sells all of the supplements you need for her treatment at cost. Because she buys in bulk from the USA, a lot of the supplements you can't buy in the UK. So she sets up everything to allow you access to what you need, because she knows that these things are treatable. So that was basically, and she biohacks. She has written research papers into these illnesses. Her lovely phrase with illnesses like mine her treatment phrase were, it's mitochondria, not hypochondria, which I think is wonderful.
Oh yes, yeah, and that's the thing that's the thing that Dave Asprey talks a lot about, isn't it? Is mitochondria but
not hypochondria. Yeah, absolutely. And that actually comes directly out of the work of Dr. Stephen Sinatra, the famous heart doctor in America, who actually, a lot of this treatment was discovered, this mitochondrial treatment for fatigue-related illnesses, because his son developed ME. And there was no treatment for him. So Dr. Sinatra started treating him as though he would treat a patient in heart failure, and gave him all, because if you're in America and you're in heart failure, you get coenzyme Q10 and you get L-carnitine and all these wonderful supplements at massive optimum doses, the doses that you need. And you get that as your standard healthcare if you're a heart patient or you have mitochondrial issues. And it worked for his son. His son recovered. So all the research came out of that. And that's basically the basis of how I started biohacking, because I was being told you're untreatable. And I was like, right, so how can I hack my biology to treat me? And I luckily came across, through serendipity, doctors who, like I say, were available online to tell me exactly how to start hacking my biology. So that's where it started.
This is the beautiful side about technology and the internet, isn't it? Is actually you had access to this. So for listeners and readers, obviously there might be people listening to this who are also in a similar predicament,
or know somebody in a similar predicament.
I'll put the links into the show notes. I mean, we've talked about some of the ones that are going to go in it anyway. So I will put Dr. Myhill's, Dr. Sinatra, and the other ones we're going to come to. Sure. But what about the kind of other thing that you were able to do whilst incapacitated in bed? Really, was you could look around at your stuff that you wanted to read, but I'm also thinking about the other two things that I know that you engaged in, which were listening to podcasts and obviously the technology that you use to hack your way into a bit like so we've talked about Bruce Lipton loads of times in terms of how you actually change the way that the biology of belief. So where do you want to go with this, Paula? Should we talk about the podcasts or?
Well, just going straight from what you've just said, I can say, I mean, in my chronology of my recovery, hot on the heels of discovering Dr. Myhill and Dr. Sinatra was Dr. Bruce Lipton. Because I was at that point, I was struggling to read for any length of time. And when I say that, I mean, like, it was difficult for me to read a page at a time. So my first big thing was audiobooks. Because when you are stuck, able to do nothing, and you're in a lot of pain and a lot of anxiety and a lot of distress, you need distraction. So so, you know, I did a lot of meditation. Meditation was like one of my saviors, and yoga nidra, but you can't do that 24 hours a day. And at this point I was only sleeping about an hour a night. So I couldn't sleep either. I had chronic insomnia. So audiobooks were my first thing. So, and Bruce Lipton's was one of the first audiobooks I got. Biology of Belief, 2000, that was again in 2008. And it just blew my mind instantly. I resonated with it 100%. I was like, oh my goodness, where has this been all my life? I loved his whole story about how he was an outcast in the 70s, when he was saying, well, look, you know, actually, if we look at these cells in this petri dish, they behave one way when we're observing them, and then a completely different way when we're not observing them. They know they're being observed, you know, and the whole quantum biology thing was just huge for me. I was just like, and I think one thing that he said very early on in his writing that really stuck with me is, and actually this links in also to another, so there were a few people in the beginning. There was Bruce Lipton, Louise Hay, the work of Louise Hay, and relationship to body and emotions, Candice Pert, molecules of emotion, Caroline Mace. I plugged into all of these people, Eckhart Tolle. And one of the things that was in common with a lot of these people, and something that I think is coined in Bruce Lipton's writing, is your cells are always listening.
Yes, I'm just going to give you a quote, and this is one from Jim Quick, actually. No, it isn't. There's quite a few, actually. Oh, Gordon Bennett, I've just had a fizz buzz again. Right, this is
what happens, listeners, when we get talking.
Actually, there's something about your mind operates this particular operating system, and your body is always eavesdropping to it. So I'm just thinking about the other one is Joe Dispenza, talks a lot about this. So, you know, Bruce Lipton, Joe Dispenza, and Greg Barden, I think it is, all go around together. So there is a lot here about whatever things become, thoughts become things, and it's your thoughts affect your biology. Period. Full stop.
Well, when you frame it this way, there is nothing that exists in this world that wasn't thought first.
Mm-hmm. Now that's probably going to blow everybody's head in. So we'll just leave that for a moment, pause, ponder, and then carry on.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Leave it that. Moment of silence. Right. Okay. So yeah, that was really important for me. Your cells are always listening. And actually that kickstarted my mental and emotional work. I started to work with NLP. And then we've got people like Jim Quick coming in, and people like Phil Parker. I did do the lightning process. I don't think it's a cure-all, but it definitely helps for mind state, for rational and irrational thought. But then you need other stuff to come in for emotions. I used tapping, emotional freedom technique. That was big for me. And basically, again, the whole Louise Hay and Wayne Dyer idea of your body is literally always listening to you. I started to monitor, how do I see myself? What are the messages that I give my body? And actually, through a hypnosis session one day, a lot of this was done via Skype because I couldn't leave home. And through a hypnosis session one day, I got to actually talk directly to my cells, to my body, which is a bit of I don't even think you and I have discussed this actually, but I actually got to talk to my body, to my cells, for a little while in this session. And it was heartbreaking because my body was telling me, you are so hard on me. You expect so much of me, and I'm doing my best, you know? And the therapist said to me, and do you have a message, an answer for your body? Do you have a message back for your body? And my message was, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I had no idea. You know? And again, this just distilled everything that I was hearing through these amazing people that I was listening to.
Yeah. One of the things is there, Paula, is so it's only some client. Obviously, they have to have enough of what we refer to as an adult ego state, or And sometimes I will work with clients who go inside, and this is about, so for example, with trauma clients, I don't make them do any of this work because it's really, really scary.
It's really tough, really tough.
Yeah, so you have to be in enough of a place where you can have that conversation and listen to the answers. So that there's something about because I mean we do all this kind of talk that, I mean, this is what most people think I do, just talk, and it's no, there's a lot more here about all the science and so on, because actually this is all the unconscious programming that you're subjected to as a child. And for me, everything that I do in psychotherapy is all about what happened in your childhood, and obviously working with children, it's what's happening and how do you make sense of it, and how do you not follow these scripts and patterns. And you know, these well, they are destructive patterns.
I agree 100%. And inner child work was huge for me, because I discovered through hypnosis and therapy, and again, massive part of my healing. And this is biohacking, because biohacking isn't just supplements, it's not just tech, and it's actually true holistic healing. And I had to address the emotional side. And I didn't have what I would term a traumatic childhood. If anybody asked me, oh yeah, I had a great happy childhood, but I didn't actually. I struggled because I'm an introvert, and I'm an empath, and I'm super sensitive. And when you're a kid and you're that sensitive, you do struggle, you know. So actually, and I have to say, I agree with you about how hard that work is, because when I started inner child work, I did it all with a therapist, and when I started inner child work, it literally broke me apart before I could start putting myself back together again. It was hard work. It was heartbreakingly hard, actually.
I can totally empathise with it. I mean, that was part of my training, is I obviously had to do not all, and I will make a disclaimer here, actually, and this is me going on a slight rant. Not all therapists do their own therapy, particularly if they're going to go and work with children. And to be honest, and obviously this is my podcast, this is my professional opinion, I think if you're going to work with children, you need to go off and do a minimum of 3 years of personal therapy, because you can't sit with a child if you do not understand where your child emerged from, and all of the patterns, and all of, because I mean, we're talking about intergenerational patterns that get passed down, any kind of DNA methylation, and we're back to that epigenetics thing, which I'm not sure we've covered yet. We're talking about, you know, I mean, and I did say I would do this. I am going to joke. I've got a tattoo of the tree of life with the, you know, the DNA helix in it, because I understand just how important this stuff about not your stuff. So it's like the intergenerational stuff. You carry some of the stuff that isn't yours on top of all the stuff that happens to you. My God, childhood is so bloody difficult.
It is, and we don't give ourselves credit for that. I mean, through my therapy, I had conversations with my mum where we clearly identified between us the generational chain of pain. You know? And it was, I think it was quite big for my mum too. I mean, my mum didn't do therapy, but she kind of got a taste through me, because I was come back from therapy sessions or come out of therapy sessions just a big wet mess, you know, a hot mess. Because it breaks you open in ways that nothing else can. And going back to what you said about if you're going to do therapy with young people, I think also doing at least 3 years of your own hardcore therapy gives you an understanding of actually how it feels to be cracked open like that. It's not easy. It's not easy, but it's so worthwhile.
Oh, massively. You've just used kind of two of the Gestalt words, which are wet and hot. Actually, when you break, if you like, there's almost like the crying that we do where it's little sniffs and that, but then there's the wet, snotty, can't breathe, can't move, and your body, and that's your cells. It is, you know, this goes all the way back to, that is your body communicating.
I also had the type of crying during therapy, and this happened a lot in hypnosis, but also in talking therapy. I had a lot of the crying where it was literally, I was just leaking. It was just pouring out of me, and the whole front of my top would be soaking wet, but there'd be no sobbing. And no, it was literally just, and crying. I'm a real moon super loopy moon goddess and all of that. I'm very in touch with my feminine, which I wasn't before my healing. I suppressed all of that along with a lot else. But certainly as a female, you know, menstruation is a cleansing process. Crying is a cleansing process. Anything where you're giving off and releasing is a cleansing process. So even like at times when there was not that hard sobbing, which I did plenty of that too, but even at times when there was not that hard sobbing, it was literally just leaking out of my face sometimes. And I could still talk exactly the way we're talking now, but it was just pouring out of me, just salt water pouring out of me. And you probably know about the research on the chemical structure of tears, the tears of joy, tears of pain. You know, they all have a different molecular structure.
Yeah. In fact, that's one of the things I'd like in. I'm going to really show my geeky side now. If I could get little, you know, like on The Big Bang, where he gets a snowflake embossed for his girlfriend. I'm like, I'd like to have tears embossed. I don't know, on a. Yeah, I'm not sure how I'd explain that to clients, but well, that's tears of joy. That's tears of sadness.
Yeah, but it's super interesting. And it's like you say, it's like that's your body talking. They're your cells talking. It's your biology speaking, literally speaking. It's having a voice. It's saying through the molecular structure of your tears, it's saying this is the emotion. And of course, the slight kind of blip in science is that still, I was talking about this with someone on Sunday, we still can't explain exactly how memories work and where they come from, exactly how emotions work and where they come from, although there are theories, and exactly how things like molecular structure of tears change
Well,
I mean, our emotion. You know, it's crazy, but
yeah, I think that's because everybody's looking for an actual physical substrate of something, and actually these are verbs. They're things that we do. They're not things that are, you know, anyway.
And they're things that we be as well, which brings in consciousness, you know, which is the big scientific mystery, you know, and I'm quite happy with it being scientific mystery, you know. I don't think we will ever pin down the nature of consciousness, but I think, you know, I'm a huge, especially having gone through my own healing journey and still being on it actually, because I think it never ends. But you know, the whole idea of the body mind, we are now finally coming back, and that's loops back to my background in yoga. What the yogis knew 5,000 years ago, what Chinese medicine has always known, is that there is no separation between the body and the mind. We are holistic.
Oh yes, yep. Would you like a beautiful metaphor from one of my people heroes? So Dan Siegel talks about the shore. Okay, so this is the mind-body connection. You can neither have sand nor sea separate, but to have a shore, they have to be together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that shore is interconnected. It's not a defined line. It's very blurry, and it moves. And it ebbs and flows.
Yep.
Yeah.
God, but I'll tell you what, at this rate we're going to have that many resources in the show notes, but who cares? It's all about education.
I'm all for giving people resources. This is like this is my raison d'etre now, is to get this stuff out, and if I can use part of my story to really you know, trigger other people into action in their own lives, I'm going to die happy, you know. Well,
actually, I think that's a very true statement. I think you will die happy because you are on this process to be happy, and that's just a guaranteed outcome, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So actually, thinking of where we are in the podcast and where we've kind of gone off on a tangent, and
like we always do.
We were talking about kind of the so you were reading around a lot of stuff, you were listening to audiobooks, and then bringing us back, because we're kind of in this realm.
You need to bring me back.
Podcasts, and then super better. So which one do you want to tackle first?
Okay, so I came to podcasts. I can't really remember exactly how I discovered them. I think it was when I first got my iPhone, which was I wasn't super early to iPhone. I got my first one was a 3GS, and it had lots of nice storage. And again, I was starting to get a little bit better, so I was starting to have tiny adventures, but podcasts were again a way to keep me centered, give me something to focus on if I had to go to a doctor's appointment or anything like that. And again, just such a great resource, such a great source of information. So I've been listening to those again for a long time. Bulletproof was huge for me. Luke Story's podcast has been huge for me. Jim Quick, like yourself. Anything to do with, I'm an improvement geek, so anything to do with like improving mind, body, spirit has been massive for me. I mean, physically, finding the Bulletproof podcast took me to the Bulletproof diet, which I started now 2.5 years ago. I'd been paleo for 6 years, and that had helped me improve quite a lot. But then I went fully Bulletproof, which is a cyclical ketogenic anti-inflammatory diet. It's not the ketogenic diet we see people losing hundreds of pounds on. It's very clean, and it's anti-inflammatory. And in 2.5 years, that's made an incredible difference to me, like huge. We met on a genetics program. My genetics are awful, and again, genetics, because of my interest in epigenetics, genetics was always a path that I was going to go down, because I know that my genetics are not my destiny, but it's very useful information. So my genetic markers for inflammation are awful. I am walking out autoimmune disease waiting to happen, and indeed I had autoimmune disease. That's why I was so ill, amongst other things. And so actually doing the Bulletproof diet really, really helped, because it took my inflammation right down. I kind of didn't lose weight exactly as I suddenly started to shrink. I got a jawbone that I didn't have before. My eyes got bigger because I lost puffiness. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, people started to say how well I looked. My skin started to glow. And then I actually did some blood tests a few months ago, which included C-reactive protein test, which is a major marker for low-level chronic inflammation in your body. And the NHS says anything below a score of 5 is normal. Mine was nearly 0. So I'd gone from autoimmune disease to having pretty much no inflammation in my body whatsoever. And just about the only thing that I'd changed was being on an anti-inflammatory cyclical keto diet, because of listening to the Bulletproof podcast. So thank you, Dave Asprey. Thank you, Bulletproof. I've got a lot to be grateful for there. So podcasts really, really helped me, and not only that, but it's, if you're a geek, there's so much to geek out on there. So much.
Well, it leaves you with no dead time. I've noticed if I'm in
no
the car,
dead time.
You're never not doing it. Oh, that was so many double negatives. But funnily enough, you're always doing something. So
you're always learning.
Yeah, always.
And what I found what's great with podcasts is, because like yourself, these podcasters, people like Dave Asprey and Luke Story, they get people on who they've discovered, who have interesting stories or interesting products, modalities, treatments, regimes, whatever. And you discover new people and new modalities through just listening to these podcasts. And it's like a ripple effect. Your knowledge goes, because you discover all these amazing people.
Yeah. This is what we were saying, wasn't it? Is how many names can we?
How many names can we drop?
No, it's silly. Yeah, there is something about, actually, if we had a wish list, we'd probably have these vibro plates. We'd probably have all the supplements. We'd be overdoing 40 years of Zen. 40 years of Zen. There's tons of tons of. And actually, that's how I came to be in contact with Pete, was actually doing the biohacking and then looking on Instagram, I think it was, and kind of having a chat with him, because actually in this country, apart from the functional medicine doctors that we know, and kind of the nutrigenomics, actually most of this is happening in the US and the conversations. So I do see that a lot of it happens in Finland, the US, places like that. and here we are. You've been doing it a lot longer than the label's been trendy, in inverted commas, but actually there is something about this is really, really helpful. Your genes are not your destiny. I'm always explaining to clients 2/3 of your behavior is what's causing the issue. It's not, I think I've written this in my book about, it's not your genes. You're not destined to be that kind of person for the rest of your life. You have choices.
Well, for me, especially in my own story, there were two statements like that were really important to me. One was, your genes are not your destiny. The other one is, you are not your story. And actually I'd had this label of ME, which is myalgic encephalomyelitis, otherwise known as chronic fatigue syndrome. Huge stigma attached to that. It's a made-up illness. I mean, it literally is a made-up illness because there's no diagnosis for it. But it used to be known as yuppie flu. You get trolled like you would not believe if you are a sufferer of this illness and you use that label. My first massive step forward was like, I'm having nothing to do with that label. I'm taking it off myself, because through looking at Dr. Sinatra and Dr. Myhill, and we spoke just before we started recording about how Dr. Myhill's little buzz phrase for ME and chronic fatigue is, it's mitochondria, not hypochondria, which I absolutely love. I was like, well, I don't have ME, because the people who coined that term for what I'm suffering openly admit they don't know what causes it and they don't know how to treat it. It doesn't exist. To me, that doesn't exist. So actually, I have mitochondrial issues. I now know that I have methylation issues, which are fixed. I now know that I have detoxification issues with heavy metal burden and things like that, which I'm working on now.
Me too.
Yeah, you too. Yeah. And I also know that, I had terrible inflammation markers and stuff like that. But none of that was set in stone because of epigenetics, because we could biohack all of this stuff to make sure that it worked better. And we are name dropping. So we've dropped Dave Asprey and people like Luke Story and Jim Quick for the mind-based stuff. And going along the mind-based stuff, and we're going to go into your territory now, Kath, with gaming, because I'm going to drop another name now, the fabulous Jane McGonigal, who I discovered, I think, in about 2012, even though I got sick in 2007, 2012 was kind of one of my worst points. It was the point at which everything had really fallen apart. I'd lost my home by then. I was actually kind of homeless. My partner left me. Everybody and everything just kind of turned around and went, well, you're this now, which is nothing. We don't want anything to do with you. Goodbye. And I ended up back living with family and literally kind of emotionally and physically on my knees, just going, oh my, I used to have a life. Where's it gone? And it was an incredibly dark place to be. And I was doing all of this good stuff through Dr. Myhill and the likes of, and Dr. Lipton, doing a lot of it by myself with, guidance of books and information. And it was actually a very lonely place. It was a very, because I don't think, with the best will in the world and as much as they love me, I don't think my family believed that I could recover, because I was so ill and because they are very much in the allopathic sphere of medicine. So I felt very lonely. I was I felt very stuck and very, and it's a long road. And when you're working with epigenetics, things don't happen quickly, especially if you're very, very ill, because you're having to just set up the right conditions around and inside of your body to allow your body to heal itself, and that takes time, and you have to be very patient, and I'm not a patient person. So I was in this quite dark place, and then through a TED talk I discovered Jane McGonigal and her system called Super Better, which kind of saved me in that little dark moment, because Jane McGonigal, and you can probably speak about Jane better than I can, but Jane McGonigal is an American games designer who had what seemed like a very innocuous head injury, TBI, traumatic brain injury. TBIs, by the way, for those of people listening to the podcast who think a TBI is if you have a big car crash and you're in a coma and stuff like that, actually TBI can be bumping your head on a shelf. We now know that even just slight knocks to the head, really gentle ones where you're like, oh, I've got a bit of a headache but nothing else happened, it's gone the next day, even that can cause major inflammation in the brain. That can change your behavior, change your emotions.
Well, I am just going to jump in there. Apart from the fact that I'm just going to let you know that my internet is playing up a little bit, so we'll just see how this goes, because this happens nearly every week now. I'm sure there's somebody coming along and doing this on purpose. But yeah, head injuries. Yeah, there is now a push to take out heading the ball for young children in football. I'm ex-martial artist. I don't do it anymore, but ex-martial artist, so are my children. And actually they engaged in a lot of so I did traditional karate and they did sport karate, and one of the things that did happen was they had lots and lots of kicks around the heads and punches. And I now sit thinking, oh shit, because I kind of had the assumption around TBIs and so on. Fast forward a couple of years, I then goes on to do the neuroscience and everything that I'm doing in terms of my training. And actually now I see huge impacts. Yeah. It really is. I mean, this is the thing with Jim Quick, isn't it? He was classed as the boy with the broken brain.
Yeah. He fell off a chair, didn't he?
Yeah. Onto a radiator, one of those old-fashioned radiators. Yeah.
And that's you kind of think, well, that's the sort of thing that happens to nearly every kid at some point during their childhood.
Yeah.
They literally fall over, bump themselves. And I mean, I've had at least 3 or 4 concussions, and because I'm an extreme sports person. So I'm still a skateboarder. I'm 47, nearly 47, and I'm still a skateboarder. But I'm skateboarder, surfer, mountain biker, rock climber. Most of it for most of my life without helmets. I'm now a huge advocate. Wear a lid, kids, please, whatever you're doing. I'm a 46, almost 47-year-old lady, and I still embarrassingly go out skateboarding, and I embarrassingly wear a helmet. And you know what? I don't care, because I'd rather wear a helmet than get.
Yeah, it's the what if, isn't it? On this occasion, I definitely agree with the amygdala that actually you should be doing the what if.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And if anybody really needs convincing, then there's a great film called The Crash Reel, which every young person should see, because it's very glam. It's about snowboarding, and it just shows you how devastating even the quickest accident can be as far as your brain is concerned. So anyway, Jane McGonigal had this fairly innocuous TBI, which ended up having huge impacts on her personality, on her emotions. She became suicidal. And she was having a really dark time. She found that she couldn't read like she used to. She's a scientist and a games designer. She couldn't do her work. And she became extremely depressed, which, again, as we know, depression is one of the side effects of TBI. She found herself in a really dark place that she couldn't see a way out of. And then one day she just had a flash of inspiration, and she was saying to herself, how can I work my way out of this? How can I use my unique view and talent to get myself out of this situation? And she decided to create a game called Super Better, which is a game you play in real life, but it is run off a platform. When I came to it in 2012, it was still just being run off a platform online, a desktop platform. There is now a Super Better app, so you can do it from your phone or your tablet. And basically, whatever life challenge you're having, whether it could be depression, it could be brain injury, it could be a chronic illness, it could just be a challenging time that you're having, something in your life that is really challenging, you can go on and create an avatar in Super Better. And basically, so you create your avatar and you design your game play within Super Better, but then you take things like your adversaries and your big evil baddies and your power-ups, you take them out of the game and into real life. So I'll give you an example. So you log in every day and you say, oh, I had these power-ups and those power-ups, and I battled this baddie and climbed this mountain. But your power-ups and your baddies and your mountains are all things in your real life. So for instance, for me, my battling my evil baddies may have been having to go to a doctor's appointment. With the illness that I had and the treatments that I was trying to give myself, I still had to deal with GPs and things like that. And it was incredibly challenging because they didn't believe in anything that I was doing. They didn't want to help me with anything that I was doing. They didn't want to give me the tests that I was requesting. It was a battle, and it used to absolutely drain me. I was fighting my corner all the time. And I'm not saying that all NHS doctors are bad. The NHS is fabulous. But if you're dealing with a long-term chronic illness, they're not the best. So especially if you want to self-help.
Yes, I think we had this discussion the other week about an issue that I took to a GP and was laughed at. And there was almost this, well, that's homeopathy kind of attitude. And
well, my take on it was always, well, you're not helping me. I might as well, if somebody tells me to wear a tutu, a unicorn horn, and stand on my head for 10 minutes a day, I'm going to do it if I think it's going to help. I'm going to at least try it for a week and see what happens. So that was my whole attitude. So like battling one of my baddies was if I had a doctor's appointment or a hospital appointment. Battling another baddie would be if I had an appointment or an assessment with the benefits people, because again, I wasn't believed. So I actually had to go to court. So there were things like that I had to deal with. I couldn't get legal aid, had to prepare my court papers from my bed, and then had to do an 80-mile round trip when I really couldn't travel to sit in my courtroom. So those were things like battling my baddies, and they were huge things. But then I had to counteract battling your baddies. You have your power-ups to make sure you don't die in your game. So my power-ups were things like, I'm going to use the little bit of energy I've got today to make a green juice. I'm going to listen to or read something inspiring, podcasts, audiobooks, all that sort of thing. I'm going to do a yoga nidra, which pretty much saved my life every day. I'm going to make sure I'm going to do 30 minutes meditation today. I'm going to take a nice Epsom salts bath today. I'm going to use my limited energy and the tiny bits of well-being that I'm just pulling back, not only to deal with the baddies and climb all the mountains that I've got to climb every day, but also to put fuel back in the tank. Because that's how gaming works, right? If you've got an appetite in the game.
Well, that's play. In terms of, I don't want to kind of call it, but actually this is, so I'm going to say, if you haven't listened yet, go back to the episode with Tony Bean. So I interviewed a therapist actually out in America called Tony Bean, and he's written a book about the psychology of, or the psychology of the psyche in games, so the hero's journey. And this is actually what we do as play therapists. I sit with children designing Pokemon that they could become, and what would this Pokemon be able to do, and how would they do that, and and we charge around the building doing whatever we need to. But this for me, Super Better, was actually something more adult-like as well. So they're varying forms, and that is exactly what gaming is. It's exactly what play is.
Yeah. So what Super Better enabled me to do, instead of just going, oh God, I'm just doing this really hard thing every day and I'm completely alone doing it, because there's community on Super Better too. So you can link up with people and stuff like that, people who are playing a similar game or different games, whatever, form allies. So that's another important part. You form allies, so you can form allies within Super Better. You also form allies in your daily life. So like if we were playing Super Better now, Kath, you would be one of my allies because you give me energy, you build me up. We always have very positive outcomes with our conversations, even if we're talking about things that are challenging us. So you would be an example of an ally for me, somebody who actually makes life better, right? So you also form alliances, and it's just remembering that you have actually all this good stuff too. And for me, and NLP comes in here too, for me, it just completely reframed my illness. because I just looked at what Jane McGonigal had done and what she'd set up for us to use. And I just went, oh my God, I can do that. I can do it. And actually, this is not about me running away from illness. It's about me being the best version of me that I can be just on this day. Because when you're in challenging times, deal with today. Worry about tomorrow when you wake up tomorrow morning, right? Just deal with what you've got to deal with today. And so that was one of my challenges. I found it really hard to plan because my health was so unpredictable, and planning was a stress. So just deal with today, Paula. Deal with today. Just let's play today's game. What's on the game sheet for today? You know, and giving myself that good stuff back, as well as putting energy out into things. So I'm remembering to use some of that vital power up energy to have fun, do good things for myself. Let myself just run wild a little bit, even if at one point running wild a little bit was playing Farmville for like 15 or 20 minutes, you know. Farmville, God, that makes me feel ancient. but you know, but just it was literally stuff like that, just what seems really, really silly. It actually really reframed my illness and allowed me to get through each day in a much more positive state. And made me so super better. Let's be super better, not let's not be ill. I don't want to be ill anymore. I came from that place. I just want my life back. I came from that place. That's really unproductive. It's very unhelpful. How about let's go from where we are right now and try and be super better at where we are we are right now.
Well, it's very superhero name, isn't it? It's a bit so here's a Jim Quick quote. You built a team, and that stands for together everyone achieves more.
Exactly.
Goes in.
Yes. And Super Better itself was an ally, you know. And it was a plan. It was a game plan. And just picking up on something you said there about the hero's journey, the heroes, that almost just, it makes me really emotional to think of the hero's journey, because that is what we are all on. And before this health crisis, I didn't know that. And the other archetype or trope that I really identify with is lost girl. So for instance, I've loved The Wizard of Oz since I was yay big, since I was a tiny, tiny girl, you know, and I still watch it to this day because it gives me something every time. Dorothy's journey is one of adversity. She has to fight scary monsters. She has to navigate her way through this surreal landscape with no map. She forms her allies. She also sees wonderful, magical, life-affirming things on the way. And then when she gets to the end, she realizes the key was in her own hand all along. The power was in her hand all along. Okay. So that was part of my super better. My super better was, I am Dorothy, and actually all I need to do every day is click my heels together 3 times and remember that I'm already home. I'm okay where I am, right? And that's an incredibly emotional way for me to put it. But I also think that, and I try to do this through my yoga practice and teaching now, that again, part of biohacking is our emotions, and to connect emotionally is so important, because it's when we make that emotional connection that whatever we're trying to achieve becomes really, really powerful for us. Right. And that was one thing before illness. I was very out of touch with my emotions. I learned as a child, I learned this through therapy, that I'd learned as a child that emotions were not safe, that they had to be shut down.
And for most people, so that as I'm talking, I'm thinking about a book that's behind me at the moment. So there's a book written by Claude Steiner. So I'm a trained in transactional analysis as well.
I love transactional analysis.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, it's the equivalent of quantum psychology for me.
Yes.
So there is something about scripts people live. So not only do we have winners scripts, losers scripts, and banal scripts, there's also the stories that we have. Pretty much you can take one of the other things in kind of Gestalt is we can even look at the kind of archetype or the fairy tale or the story that you tell yourself. And it's I'm listening how you've identified with The Wizard of Oz, and actually that story is about seeing behind the curtain and recognizing it was always in me all along.
Absolutely.
Which I think once people have actually done their own therapy is the ultimate key anyway, is actually, I don't fix anybody. So quite often people say, thank you. And I say, for what? All I did was provide you the mirror to see what you always needed to see.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking about where we are time-wise. Because obviously I could now go on a complete therapy thing here about, oh my God, you've used that metaphor, and it's so, yeah, but I'm not going to. That's egotistical. And I've done that in so many episodes. I'm just going to STR for you. So is there anything, I'm just looking at my books, I don't know what for, right. One thing I'm going to say for those who are listening actually is we're both wearing our blue blockers. We are. I'm actually wearing mine that I use for the computer, but there's lots and lots of different blue blockers as well that we could talk about. But I think what we will do is probably head towards a close, because I think what you've done is beautifully talk about your recovery and where we've got to, and also we've got lots of other stuff to chat about as well. So is there anything else you want to put into this episode, Paula, apart from asking Dave Asprey to get you on his podcast and talk about your bulletproof recovery journey?
Yes, I would love that. Yes, please, Dave, if you're listening, let's put that out there, because
to the universe.
Out to the universe, because bulletproof has been really pivotal.
For me too.
Important, and I've been to Seattle and I absolutely loved it. I didn't get to Vancouver Island, otherwise I'd been knocking on his door, but next time. And interestingly enough, my visit to the Pacific Northwest, again, my recovery went up a notch, and I actually think it was because it's so clean out there. It's so, I can understand why he lives up there, because it's so clean. Forests for days, ancient rainforests. I was breathing in new microbiomes, and it was just
forest bathing. Yeah,
absolutely. I love it. Get me to a tree or get me to the ocean. Those are my two happy places. Mountains, trees, oceans, and the Pacific Northwest has that in spades. So Dave, if you need an assistant or personal yoga teacher or any of that stuff.
I like this. I'll tell you what, this is we're going to have to start hashtagging the heck out of this now. So.
We are. But yeah, massively influential. And I think just in closing, my whole message, because like you, obviously I'm not a therapist. I'm a yoga teacher, but I'm also I'm trying to get my fingers into as many pies as possible, because I want to spread the love of, I'm huge on natural health and well-being, huge. So you know that I've recently hooked up with a Swiss company based out in Germany called Weleda. It's actually a non-profit company, which a lot of people don't realise. It was founded by Rudolf Steiner in the 1920s, and my favourite product of theirs, Skin Food, which I've been using for decades, hasn't changed in its ingredients since 1926. And this is they have a massive, they're massively ecologically sound, they're environmentally sound, they're ethically sound. They don't do animal testing, anything like that. Everything. They're not only organic and 100% natural, but their ingredients are biodynamic as well. It's pretty much gold standard of what you can put on your skin. They also do homeopathic medicines. So hooking up, so I'd love to hook up with Bulletproof, because hooking up with people like this is like so exciting to me now. It's obviously our friends Thomas and Shania at Gen Smart have been huge on both of our journeys too, with information. And Shania, actually, Dr. Shania is actually one of the best functional medicine doctors I've come across in my whole journey.
Absolutely.
She joined dots for me that
well,
I didn't even know. Yeah, you will, because she's amazing. But yeah, just to know, and the butt of all of that is just, I think the most important thing is to be a seeker, and to know that, like Dorothy and a lot of the other hero's journey and lost girl archetypes, Harry Potter and all of that, Luke Skywalker, The answers are always right there. I mean, actually Star Wars, again, going geeky, games, movies, science fiction. Star Wars was huge for me right from being a kid. And again, I've enjoyed, Yoda has some of my favorite Zen quotes ever. What is his favorite one of mine? His favorite one is,
would you be going do or do not try?
Do or do not do, there is no try. Absolutely. Yeah. And Dr. Wayne Dyer always used to say, trying is dying. Trying is dying. Yeah. Don't try. The word try sets you up for failure. It allows you to, and failure is okay. Yeah. Failure is fine. We learn through failure. And, you know, another one of my hooks is fail better. I actually have a piece of art on my wall that says fail better. But yeah, just know that the key is always in your hand. Nobody can make you better. You can make you better, super better. You know, but know also that it's daily work, and that daily work can also be play. I mean, just my absolute last thing is my own yoga business is called Life of Lila. Life of Lila is came to me during meditation, and I use that name because Lila is a Sanskrit term, which means play. And that was the absolute crux for me, is turning hard work into play. It's still work, but we can always approach it like game.
Well, I'm just going to end with, actually, if you gamify something, the likelihood is you're going to engage in it in a more joyous capacity, which absolutely sums up what we've been talking about. So
and the positivity of game. You know, do not demonize play, and do not demonize game, whether that's computer games or super better or anything. Do not demonize it, because it all has value. Huge value.
I shall take that note to go. Separately, I'll do a rant about that with the along with that. I think people have already cottoned on that this might be my bugbear. But thank you so much for your time, Paula. And obviously, if it's okay with you, I'll leave your if you want to give me your social media details that you're happy to share with people.
Yeah, sure.
I'll put that into the show notes, along with the thesis of all of the contacts that we're going to put in there, and hopefully people can use.
By the way, Kath and I met through Instagram, through a friend of a friend through Instagram. And Instagram, when I was in that lonely place and I started doing super bad, it gave me my community. So again, social media is not evil. It actually gave me community when I had none. So
actually, I'm going to go off on a slight tangent. That's what Jamie Wheel talks about with Communitas. So at the moment, he's doing Recapture the Rapture, his second book. You know, so this is the Flow Genome Project. And actually, that, in fact, there's another name drop. That's something that actually this is where we talk about ecstasis, Communitas. It's all about. In fact, I know isolation and loneliness is the biggest killer. So
it's terrible for your health. It's terrible for your health. But if you are in that physical position where you can't leave home and you do live alone, it's incredibly tough. Social media is a lifesaver, an absolute lifesaver. It's not time wasted, it's connections made. And I now have a bunch of people, beautiful people in my real life, people like you and Pete and many others who wouldn't be in my life if it wasn't for Instagram and Facebook and social media. Absolutely. So I'm incredibly grateful. And I also went there with Flow Genome, and the book Flow was another one that really, really got me on the right road. So we could be here all day and all night.
Well, how about we do another episode at some point? Maybe even bring Pete on, especially when I get me Aura ring. We could do a three-way.
Fabulous.
On that note, right. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Kath. It's been fun. Okay. Thank you.